it looks like we're streaming live into the GGC Facebook group. So, welcome everybody. I am delighted to be joined by Stacey Simmons, who is the author of this fantastic book, which is the focus of this live. I'm going to let Stacey introduce herself in more depth, and Maureen Hascoet, who is the founder of Firewalk Productions Limited. Maureen?
Firewalker Pictures. Thank
Firewalker
you.
Pictures. I got the name, not the
Yeah,
business name. We
that's
knew
fine.
something was going to happen, ladies. But I'll let you both have a wee chat about who you are and what you do, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this must-read book for every woman, I think. Okay, fabulous. Stacey, we'll start with yourself.
Well, my name is Stacey Simmons. I am a psychotherapist in Los Angeles, but before I became a psychotherapist, I was a social psychologist and a studio executive in the entertainment business, which is not a very friendly place for women, shall we say? Which is what drove me to become a psychotherapist. Went back to university, got a degree so I could see clients, see patients. And yeah, it kind of rocked my world. And part of my research when I was finishing up that degree was I discovered this new pattern for women's archetypal journeys. And I thought, oh, this is very exciting. I'll write up my little thesis and be done. And I wrote it, and then the story started to come into my consulting room, and it started to show up in all the movies I was watching, and it started to show up in all the TV shows I was watching. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, something is happening. I thought I was done. I guess I'm not done. So I pulled it together and wrote the book and was, lucky enough to find a publisher for it. And here we are.
Here we are. Right, fabulous. Okay, and we're going to get into the book in more depth. Maureen, tell us a bit about yourself as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so I am a filmmaker. I'm based near Glasgow, and I also hold events for the industry, and I in a bid to create an ecosystem up here in Scotland. And the way that I came across the book, well, two different things. So it came through a screenwriter based in Glasgow called Mariam Omari,
Okay.
um, who, you know, when you've got a good friend who just like sits you down for coffee and was like, I read this book. You have to read this book.
Yes.
As I'm sure you do in the book club, Laura, as well.
Yes, yes. And
And
you did
so
it for me.
yeah, exactly.
Love
So,
it.
you know, and that's what women do, I think, like when we find something that works for us, like,
Yeah.
we just have to tell the world and our friends. So yeah, so she kindly did that for me, and then I went and bought the book and read it, and of course she was right. And so many things resonated. And so we started yeah, chatting with Stacey, the three of us, and it's led to this weekend where Stacey is in Glasgow and yeah, doing a workshop for 2 days. But it really, just to put it in context also, like for, so I worked with the London Screenwriters Festival for about 15 years, and so I'm their in-house feminist. So
Yes. Every business must have that.
exactly. And so what that means is that every year, or you know, so or so, I do their female gaze panel at the festival in London, and so that gives me a chance to really take stock every year of where we're at in terms of women on screen, women in, you know, in the industry, and the theory behind like the way we tell stories. And so, you know about the hero's journey, and there's been the context of how I came to know Stacey is also because, like, in the last couple of years, or a couple of decades, really, it's been clear that the hero's journey doesn't work for women, and there's been different attempts to right the wrong. But there's been a few books, basically, of theories coming out, like, you know, the heroine's journey, I think, and then the Virgin's Promise, and none of them really jumped off the page for me until the Queen's Path, and then I'll hand it back to you, ladies. But basically, that's for me. That's the context, and we'll see why it's so different.
Yes, definitely. Right, okay, Stacey, let's get into it. So let's start from the top. So for obviously hero's journey,
Mhm.
for anybody that doesn't know what that is, can you tell us a wee bit about?
Absolutely. So Joseph Campbell discovered the hero's journey in much the same way that I discovered the Queen's Path, but he did his like 80 years ago. So he looked at mythology and stories and novels and saw that across cultures there was, he called it a monomyth, which I find incredibly insulting because that presumes that the only story is a man's story, right? Like it's really the manomyth, not the monomyth. So it's like and his thing was very simple. It was like, boy feels called to adventure. He rejects the call. He's forced into the call. He goes on a quest. He learns something important, gets the elixir of life, and goes back to his people to share the boon with them. Like it's, depending on whose work you're looking at, it's like Campbell's is like four sentences, and Chris Vogler's is like 17 steps, right? So it's
Okay.
everybody's got a different kind of take on the hero's journey, but they all basically say the same thing. And it's like, boy feels called to adventure. He goes off on a quest and comes back and shares his knowledge with his people. But women can't take the hero's journey. And it's not because we can't do the work of the quest. It's not about the work of the quest at all. It's not about whether or not a woman can slay a dragon. She can. It's not
Yeah.
about whether or not she can run a company. She can. It's that when she does all of that, she comes back with the elixir of life, and everybody goes, "Ugh, from a girl?" And that's the end of that. So it's not whether or not she can do the questing, it's whether or not anybody wants it from her when she comes back.
Yeah.
And that is so hard. And I can imagine. I know that Maureen and I have had like umpteen gajillion discussions about this, about our own experiences in studios and in productions and trying to, talk to the big boys about about the projects and getting the money or raising the money or doing the thing. And it's always really easy for the boys to be dismissive because they're not used to listening to a woman.
Hmm.
And that's the difference between the hero's journey and the Queen's Path, is that Queen's Path explains why that happens and how to overcome it. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, it's like so a long time coming, this Queen's Path, because in the book you talk about, as well as the women maybe not being trusted or n not believed, or people don't want her to be the hero, there's also so much that happens in a woman's life culturally, all out external factors that really sh divide her, should we say?
Yeah,
Divide her?
right. Well, that's the language I use, is that I
Yes.
call this the divided woman, that we are trained from a young age, right? To be like, well, be pretty, but also don't be too pretty. Be serious, but be carefree and easy to get along with. Be likable, but make sure that you don't let the wrong people in, right? Like it's always this constant thing where it's like we're being pulled in one way or the other because we're asked to straddle this place that is almost impossible. It's a tightrope walk, and we all fall. We have to. It's by design. It's meant to keep us divided against ourselves. So we're so busy trying to keep up with the cultural expectations or the familial expectations
Yeah.
that we can't pay attention to ourselves and what we want. And that's the distinction. And some of it, is this expectation of motherhood, this expectation of sexual availability, this expectation of beauty, this expectation of like putting everyone else's needs first, as opposed to having an identity that's based on our own internal drive, our own like longing, our own calling, our own capacity, our own artistic or creative or scientific longings. We're told that those don't matter because we're women, and that never happens for men. A man never hears, "Oh, you can't do that because you're a man," unless it's he wants to like, I don't know, be a drag queen or something. And even then, there's a path to that, right? Like
Yeah.
there's still a way. So it's these forces keep us on. I call it the divide. I call women who are in this place the divided woman, and we are forced onto one of two tracks.
Mm.
So either we take the track of tradition, which is, I call it MISOR, Maiden in Search of Relationship. So it's just an acronym describing how this works in the divide. So
Mhm.
you're either MISOR, and that's kind of like your typical 1950s housewife, trad wife, those kind of roles like motherhood, all that in the traditional way, like neglecting yourself basically, or putting all of your love and desire into a family.
Yeah.
Or the flip side of that is magical, isolated, powerful, and endangered, or MIPE. And the Mipe is almost always the woman whose power comes from herself. A Misor's power comes from her family or her institution, whereas the Mipe's family is her, or power is her own. And so, because her power is her own, she's often isolated and sometimes hunted to the point of because she's a threat to the status, right? So she's a
Yeah.
threat to the status quo or to the people around her. So yeah, it's pretty and we all we're not all either miso or mipe. We all kind of tend to, more towards one or the other. So it's more percentages.
Yeah.
But we see it in all the stories that we tell. And certainly when I talk to women about this, they're like, oh my God, I'm a mipe, or oh my God, my mom was like the miso, right? That was me. My mom was like the
Yes.
penultimate miso, and I'm the 100%, I'm not 100% MePay. I'm like 95% MePay for sure. Like always, on the outside trying to get in, always trying to get in.
Yeah.
Like it was a puzzle. And I had this, I remember hearing Hero's Journey and being like, oh, I can do that. I can go, if I go get the elixir of life, then the boys will let me in the club.
Yeah.
Nope,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, never.
So you've got a wee quiz, a wee mini quiz in the book, and then you ask a series of questions to work out if you're more Mipe or Misor, and I was more Mipe as well. To kind of exemplify these two kind of roles, can you tell us about like a popular story? Like, whatever one, just to kind of exemplify who these characters might be in the story.
Oh, absolutely. So my favorite one right now is Wicked.
Yeah,
So if you've seen Wicked, Glenda is the Misor and Elphaba is the Mipe,
yeah.
right? So she's popular, she's fun, she's pretty, everybody wants to be like her. She has lots of power because her family has money, right? So that's the Misor character. And then the Mipe is always kind of the odd bird out. She's off on her own, like Elphaba. Elphaba even has the added problem. So this is also part of the journey of they all have curses and marks, both whether Mipe or Misor, but Elphabos is particularly intense because she's green, right? So
Mhm.
her
Yeah.
curse is like right in front of you. You can't miss it. And so she's ostracized and she has all this magical power that, people want to take advantage of, but they don't want her to have it. So
Yes, very, very true. Okay, so we've got the divided woman and we've got the two archetypes.
mhm.
Tell us more about the Queen's path, like the journey.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. So if you think about it, the way the map works, it looks kind of like a wheel or a clock.
Hmm.
So clock is probably the easiest way to describe it. So, and it's broken into four quadrants and two hemispheres. So you think about the line going across the horizontal line, that's like the horizon. Everything above that is the world of visible power and form. So everything you can see, right? Like the power that you can see, the structures you can see. Everything below that line is kind of like the unconscious. Everything's happening behind the scenes where you're not aware of where the power is shifting or how things are happening. But then the quadrants, so the first quadrant, 1 to 3 o'clock, so 1 o'clock to 3 or 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock is that's kind of like a backstory, right? But it's the once upon a time moment, it's the curse and the mark, and it's a step called blind. The most important of those in a narrative, whether it's your own narrative about your own life or you're telling a story, is to figure out what are the curse and mark for that person, and where am I blind or where was I blind, right? For me, my curse, I talk a little bit about it in the book, was I was always weird, and that's because I had a death very early in my family, and so I was always this weird kind of existential child. But that made me read books and it made me draw and it made me, it kind of had a new mark that covered weird and it was smart. So I just used it, right? I just used smart wherever I could. But that made me blind to the structures around me that were, not of my creation. And everything that went wrong for the longest time in my life, I thought was personal. I thought it was either someone reacting to me or it was my fault because I was weird and I was covering up my weird, right? And I didn't know how to manage my weird. So it must be my fault that these people don't like me or this job isn't working out. It must be me. So that's the first quadrant. Then you get into the second quadrant, which becomes more intense because now you're going into the underworld of the unconscious, right? Now you're working around in stuff where nobody's going to see you do this work until the end. So it's really difficult and painful. And that first step is cleaved. And that first step in the second quadrant is the one where you get ripped into the world of either the miso or the mipe. You're going to live on one of these tracks from here through the third quadrant. So buckle up, basically, because it's not going to be fun. And once that happens, everything kind of follows in parallel because the miso and the mipe they're not opposites of each other. They're companions, they're complements. And so they're going through exactly the same steps. It just looks different through a different lens. One's got like a pink, uh, like, what's her name? Glenda lens, and one's got the green Elphaba lens, right? Like, so, but they're the same journey. So after that, after being cleaved, then you often meet your counterpart, right? Like you meet your companion. In the movies, it's almost always a thing like Elphaba and Glenda, right? Or Sabrina and Samantha and Bewitched, or um, Vivian and Elwood's in Legally Blonde. So there's always two. So you go through the meeting part, and then there's the commit part. Like something happens and you commit. You double down on your curse or your mark, and it's a commitment not to you who you truly are. It's not a commitment to the self. It's a commitment to the curse. So I double down. Like when I worked in a studio, I was like, okay, they won't listen to me. I can work harder than them. I'll outwork them. I'll outthink them. I will come in with all these systems that'll fix all these broken things and they're going to love me, right?
Mhm.
No, never.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So it's me committing to my curse. Like, I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be, outside. I don't want to be poorly thought of. So I'm going to outdo everybody. And that takes you to the step that's super hard called the hunt. Now, the hunt, and this is the last part of the second quadrant, right? So the hunt can actually start anywhere up to that point. It can start in childhood, like you might want to have been an Olympic athlete, right? Or you wanted to be like me, I wanted to be in the movie business. So it could have started when you were 10, but it's going to end at the end of the second quadrant. And when it ends, it's horrible because people lose a lot and they
Mhm.
go from the second into the third quadrant. The third quadrant is the danger quadrant, and it really is what the other part that substantially differentiates the queen's path from the hero's journey because women's stories historically have ended here. A woman gets married, her identity is gone. She's she's Mrs. So and so. She's Mrs. Henderson. She's Mrs. Anderson. She's no longer Stacy. She's
Mhm.
someone else. And she's not even a whole person. She's a reflection of another person,
Mhm.
right? So that's one way that the story can end. This step called abjection. So it comes from Julia Kristeva, who's a psychoanalyst and film critic in France, but she came up with this idea in the sense of like how we the things we hate about humanity, and it's almost always female. And so we hate, we treat the things that we are scared of or loathe with this kind of horror and disdain, like we can't look at it. And that's what we do when we get to this step. So a woman gets married and her identity, her individual identity ceases to exist. Or she she keeps doubling down on her curse and she becomes ego inflated and she can't stop working and everything is in service to her ego, right? So
Mhm.
if you think about a movie like Fatal Attraction, where that character is trying to marry, like she's going to kill the wife so she can marry the guy, right? And have his baby. And it gets to that level of crazy, right? Like, so, and
Yeah.
then murdered and that's her objection step. Or more recently, Promising Young Woman. That movie ends in the third quadrant as well. Cassie never gets to sovereignty. She only gets as far as objection. So lots and lots of bad things happen to women in this step, and some women don't escape.
Mhm.
Women who are in abusive relationships don't escape. Women who are embroiled in addiction don't escape. Women who are stuck in cycles of abuse or stuck in cycles of disordered eating, all of that, you wind up getting stuck there. The next step after objection, if you are lucky enough to get out of abjection, you go to choice. Now,
Mhm.
in movies, especially like family films, this is where the two sisters wind up swapping powers. So if it's Frozen, Anna, who has no powers, saves Elsa, who has all the powers, right? Just as her last breath is being spent out of her frozen body, right? Like she saves her sister.
Yeah.
So the and Elsa has to soften. She can't be just hard and defended all the time. She has to trust. And this is what happens for real women, but it's not the choice between how do I exchange powers with my sister self? It's what have I thrown away that is inherent to who I am? What have I thrown away of me so that because I had to fit in one of these lanes, what have I thrown away that I need to reclaim as my own? And for me, it was becoming a therapist and being able to sit in that place with other people, which I had always done. I had always been kind of like this mom character in wherever I was. And the people who worked with me and liked me knew that about me. And they'd come and they'd like sit in my office for hours and tell me their problems with so and so at work, or the production was over budget and what were they going to tell the EP and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't know that about myself because I was like, I'm not soft. I'm not like sweet. Like I'm a hard studio executive. I make the hard choices, right? I am like this mushball marshmallow person who's like loves people. So when I went to graduate school, I had to really like embrace that. And it was hard because I had to like drop all my defenses and it was tough. But once you do that, you can go to the last step in the third quadrant, which is embodiment. And in the movies, this or in television or in novels, this almost always looks like something physical. It's like in the movie Maleficent, Maleficent gets her wings back. In the movie Legally Blonde, Elle stands up in court and she finally knows how to talk about the case that's in front of her, all this stuff. Embodiment's so important because for real women, we are taught from a young age to deny that we even have a body. Our body's not for us, it's for other people. It's for men, it's for culture, it's for babies, it's not for us. So reclaiming the body becomes really critical to the Queen's Path for a real woman. To say, no, my body is actually the seat of my divinity. My body is the seat of my being. It's the sacred place of unfolding of my identity in the world. And when a woman can do that, she reclaims something wholly untouchable by anyone else. And in the movies or in, therapy, like I always bring my clients back to where is your body safe? How do you be safe in your body now that you're making this decision or that you're changing direction? Where is the safest place that you can be in your body? Do you need to have a massage? Do you need to have no one touch you at all? Do you need to like buy yourself a power suit? Do you need to get a fancy pair of, beautiful high heels to stomp around in and feel like a supermodel? Or do you need to like wear the Birkenstocks and grungy pants and not dress up for anybody because screw them, like what is it, right?
Yeah.
But once you have the embodiment step kind of at least dialed in, it doesn't have to be perfect because none of this ever has to be perfect. Once you're there, then you get to sovereignty. You're back, you leave the underworld, you're back into the visible world of power and form, and you claim your territory, you gather your tribe, and you ascend to your throne or hold your crown. And that's about recognizing that once you realize what sovereignty is, it's not freedom. Freedom can be given and it can be taken away.
Hmm.
Sovereignty is yours and it is inherent to your being. So even if you live under an oppressive government or you live in a terrible situation with an abusive partner, if you claim your sovereignty for yourself, it will eventually lead you to freedom. But if you pretend that sovereignty and freedom are the same thing, then somebody else is always going to hold it over you. So gather your tribe, figure out who your sisters are, who are the real people who are going to be there with you, and claim your territory. What is it? For me, it's writing and therapy. That's my territory. And my crown is like I don't nobody intimidates me anymore. I mean, it's not to say I don't get embarrassed or that I don't, have people that matter to me that I'm worried about what they think, but that's because I love them and I want them to be meaningful to me and I want to be meaningful to them, right? I have this partnership with Maureen, like and we talk sometimes when it's really hard about how are we doing this hard thing because she's my queenly partner, like she's another queen
Oh, I
that
love
I
it.
have this, oh, I'm gonna cry, that I have this
Oh,
gratitude for and deep respect for what she's trying to do and how I get to participate in it. So yeah, that's the Queen's Path in a nutshell.
oh, right. Love it. Love it. So, and I also love that dialogue between you and Maureen there. That was so, so lovely. And it's really, really apt for the GGC because we are a community of, I think we're nearly 50,000 in this Facebook group. And there's so many friendships that flourish, so many wee mini communities that are forming from the community, and it is really magical when women band together and rise together. I know that might sound a bit cheesy, but it's so true. Like we are, there's a lot of magic when women come together. So sovereignty is the end game then.
Correct.
Could you give us a wee kind of definition, sorry, of what that means?
I mean, it's real, it can be very simple. It's the ability to own yourself wholly.
Mm,
You own you. Nobody else owns you. That's not to say you don't have commitments. You might have children, you might have a job, you might have a partnership, you might have a marriage. Like all of that has a claim on you, but it doesn't own you and it doesn't define you. You own you. You define you. You decide what Laura's all about. You decide what Maureen is all about. I decide what Stacy's all about. And if a man gets in the way or my kid gets in the way or then I have to sit there and be like, okay, what does this mean? How do I want to interact with this problem as opposed to just rolling over and letting it be defined by someone else? So that for me, sovereignty is, it's not, it's not that it's all important, but that once you have it, like once you like feel it, you won't go back. You won't. And freedom feels cheap in the face of sovereignty because you can burn me at the stake. You won't take this from me. And yeah, that's it.
oh, and you mentioned burning at the stake. The witch trials feature in this, which I found really interesting. I actually learned a lot about it in the book as well. So, yeah, but we want people to read the book. You have throughout the story, there's some activity exercises which you encourage readers to do to help them establish, their own journey. Could you give us maybe people listening to this just now, could you give us some things that ladies could do to help them kind of maybe establish where they are in the Queen's Path or establish, the Meepy Miser? Give
Mhm.
it maybe some wee takeaways that they can do.
I think the first one that I always ask people to do is to understand your curse and your mark. Like
Hmm.
what cursed you and how old were you? Most of us, it's like 7 or 8 years old is the first curse. And sometimes it's something really awful, like sexual assault or incest. Sometimes it's something that seems pretty innocuous, but like, oh, my mom cut all my hair off when I was 7 and I looked like a sheepdog for the next 3 years. Like, could be something that feels innocuous, but it had real impact on that person.
Yeah,
Um, so it could be anything, and there's very likely more than one.
yeah.
So identifying what the curse and the mark is the first step, and then figuring out the mipe or the misor. Which one do you tend to fall more in line with? Are you more mipe or are you more misor? And if so, it helps you kind of recognize yourself and recognize the women around you. Because if you're like, let's say you're a mipe and you work with a bunch of misors, right? Like, then you're going to be like, oh, I'm never going to fit in with those women. It's like,
Mhm.
I'm not like there's one story I write about, but when I worked at LSU in a university and I got invited to this meeting and I'm originally from New Orleans. And so this was at Louisiana State University and all these Southern Belle women who ran this meeting and they were all business women. They weren't like housewives. They were business women, but they were mesors and they knew how to play this thing I call the girl game, which I suck at. I cannot play the girl game. And so they came in and they set up the coffee service, they set up the snacks, they put out all the papers and stuff for this LSU professors, 90% of whom were men. And they let the men talk. This was their meeting, but they let the men talk. And there was this one woman who had this unbelievably gorgeous pink tailored suit. And I loved it so much. I went out and bought a copycat.
Nice.
And so beautiful. It was hot pink. Oh, so she looked like $1 million. And she had this big, beautiful blonde coiffed hair. She was looked like Barbie, right?
Mhm.
And, but she was smart as a whip. And so she let the men do their thing. And then about 20 minutes before the meeting was set to be over, the men were losing steam and she's like, you know what, boys? We got this. Let us handle the rest of it. Y'all go ahead. We'll finish up, blah, blah. So, and I was like, what a waste of my time, right? Like I reason this whole time. So the guys left, and I started to put my things in my bag, and I realized none of the ladies were moving. None of those business women were doing a thing. And I was like, hmm. sit here for a minute and see what happens. And the pink suit lady said, okay, ladies, let's get this meeting really started. We got 20 minutes. They came up with a whole new agenda. They delegated all the steps to the other women in the group. They made a new theme. I mean, it was impressive. And I was just sitting there like in awe of this person, right? Like how she did things. And I realized I'm never going to be able to do that. I am too confrontational. I don't like the boys being dumb for 40 minutes and just, inflating their own egos all the time. I was visibly like I had visible disdain the whole time. Nobody would have been like, "Oh, Stacey's such a team player." They would have been like, "Wow, that she's a bitch." Like watch her face. And they didn't. They knew what they were doing. They were playing along. So knowing if you're more Mipe or Misor can help you figure out how to navigate. Also, give those other women a break, right? Like women who are Misors, they're in the same journey as you.
Yeah,
We're all doing the same thing. It just has a different, slightly different flavor, a slightly different tinge to what we're doing. It's just who plays what part better, right? I can't play the pink suit lady at all, but man, I want to be on her team.
yeah. Oh, love it, love it, love it, love it. And then the end goal is sovereignty.
It's sovereignty, but you know what's interesting about it, Laura, is it's not just sovereignty for me, because
Hmm.
sovereignty for me means nothing if there's not sovereignty for everybody.
Yes.
And so one of the things that's necessary is once a woman understands what sovereignty is for her, to find other women who are sovereign or seeking sovereignty in order to create new networks, to create new options, to create new ways of doing things, of doing business, of making change in the world. Because at the end of the day, we can't rely on the old networks. We can't rely on the systems that uphold patriarchy to open the doors for us. We have to create new systems. If we don't, we're always going to be relying on the guys, and that's not fair to us and our sovereignty. So we're probably at the beginning stages of it, but it's critical. We have to have different systems that, and if it means, it might mean that sometimes we invite the boys in, sometimes it may mean that we say no, and that's okay, right? Do they have sovereignty? Are they willing to participate in our sovereignty? If so, come in, welcome,
Yeah.
be part of it. If not, see you later. There's the door. You have your own system, right? So,
Yes. Love it. Forging a path. And I found it incredibly validating as well reading it because in every story that you mention, and you also talk a lot about, clients and therapy and everything. And I found it really helps having those examples because then you're thinking to yourself, that is what I do, or maybe that's what my sister does, or my best friend does that all the time. And it's, yeah, just realizing that we're all, because women are so often pitted against each other by the patriarchy. And it's almost like learned behavior for many of us to just be in competition with other women, try and tear them down to rise yourself up. But actually, this is a whole new way of explaining why women are different because of the divide and actually how we can all benefit just by understanding each other better because we're all going to the same. And when you do have sovereignty, a crowd of you, like more people have it, women will just get more stronger, more powerful. And there's a lot on social media at the moment about men and women, isn't there? There is. It's hot topic because trad wife's a hot topic. You've got a lot of feminist chat, then you've got a lot of men hating women chat. I feel like I get fed that a lot on social media, probably because I'm really into the feminist chat. So I feel as though this book has come along at a really pivotal time of where we're at in society as well.
appreciate that. It's interesting because I've been a dyed-in-the-wool feminist probably since the womb. My mother was not. She thought feminism was like the bane of the bane of her existence, that it had taken something from her. And for me, I look at that and I say, well, my mother's life, and she and I had a really difficult relationship. I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm, rah rah mom, but I don't think that the life she wanted was wrong. I think that the way she expected it was doomed to fail.
Hmm.
And that's a very different distinction. I think trad wife, not as an aesthetic, but as a practice, could be a legitimate thing for a woman and who has a good partner for whom that makes sense for them.
Yep.
What I ask her to do is protect herself, right? So a dowry, for example, is an old tradition that started like in the 8th century, and it was there to make sure that a woman of means did not become a slave in her marriage.
Yeah.
If she got divorced or separated from her husband or whatever, she still had her own money to leave, her own, fields or her own crops or her own sheep or her own cash or whatever. And it wasn't a bride price, it was hers. If she left, she took that with her. And I think that it's not unreasonable to put that out there. If a woman wants that kind of traditional, I say that with gigantic air quotes because I don't necessarily think it's traditional, but if she wants that kind of marriage or life, okay, fine. Make sure you are protected. You're not a slave in that system
Yep.
because the minute you say, I don't need protection, now you're not sovereign. So,
Yes, okay. And I mentioned this to you as well. So, a big part of the GGC is women in business, women that are business owners. We've got our own business membership. And my background is marketing, and I'm always a big advocate of storytelling in promoting your business because something that we've learned from this group is people, well, we know across the globe, people buy from people, but particularly in the GGC, when members share their own stories and share a wee bit of vulnerability, however much they're comfortable to do so, then that's when they get people bought into them and that's when they see it making a difference in their business. And what I find really interesting about this is because the hero's journey was always something that we looked at, like even in uni and everything, if you're telling your own story, like here's all the things. And then men don't need to be worried about like their safety. Like, that's obviously, I know bad things happen to men as well, of course, but women are brought up to be like, here's how you don't be too sexy in case, God forbid, someone assaults you, but do it like you said at the beginning. So it's almost like this kind of breathes new air into the storytelling that businesswomen can share as well, because we do have things that we come up against, whether you're a mum or not, then that's going to affect the journey that you go on. And if you choose not to be, again, that could affect your journey. So I think it's really, really powerful. And it's actually a book that we are doing a read along in the Glow
mhm.
Club to encourage the business members to, be able to use it in their own storytelling. So I don't want to give everything away from the book. Actually, we do want people to read it, but you are having an event this weekend, ladies. So I would love for you to share. I've popped the link to it underneath this live. But I'd love for you to share a wee bit more about the event in case anybody is fancying coming along and finding out more.
Turn that over to Maureen.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, so this you got by now like the texture, like the nitty-gritty of what, the Queen's Path is about. So what we're doing really is a 2-day deep dive into each quadrant, the clock face that Stacey mentioned, and she's taking us through it all over like each half day, where we have exciting guest speakers coming to join the tribe for a little bit and, exploring how that worked. So on the Saturday, we have Olivia Hetrid zooming in from London, I think. So Olivia used to be, up until very recently, the chair of the Writers Guild of Great Britain.
Right.
She wrote the screenplay for The Girl with the Pearl Earring, and more recently, Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, which is a thing based on a true story, which I loved. It was um, so I think we're gonna, deep dive into those characters and those stories and how the Queen's Path manifests in those stories as well. And then on the Sunday, we have Andrea Gibb, who is a very own Scottish screenwriter, who's done amazing work recently. She works a lot with Synchronicity, with Claire Mundell, and she wrote Mayflies with Martin Compston, Tony Curran, Ashley Jensen, and she won a BAFTA for that.
Brilliant.
And recently she wrote Miss Austen, which I
Wow.
think I know yeah, we're all looking forward to exploring in further depth as well. And then yourself, Laura, I believe you're joining us. on Sunday
Oh, I'm so
afternoon.
honored.
Oh, it's going to be so good. And you're bringing such a great flavor to this as well. Because, as you say, I think really the distinction in Stacey's book for me is the psychotherapist bit. So it's the Stacey bits.
Yes.
It's yeah, it's what really makes it just, lift up the page and be more than just a Bible for screenwriters, basically. It's really not only just, I mean, I think as women, storytelling is so important. The stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell our children, our people. And the big feedback that, I feel like we're very honored to have is that women who have already interacted with us, with Stacey, and read the book, and some of them have gone back and talked to their mothers, and it feels like there's a generational healing happening. So it's a tool for real, sharing stories that their mothers had never shared before. We have a woman in particular who's coming in the weekend, and she was saying, I really thought when I opened the conversation that my mom was going to shut me down, but not only didn't she shut me down, but she actually shared stories I'd never heard before. And this is, she's my age. So
Brilliant.
she's gone all her life without knowing really, the challenges that her mom faced, some of the circumstances, and that's huge. I think,
Yeah.
so Stacey, you were talking about your relationship with your mom. Like, I think as women, we always, that's our first example, that's our first model, so we tend to go to that. So it's already been a huge journey of sharing and transformation. And yeah, this weekend is gonna be it's
It's
gonna
going to
be
be so powerful. It's going to be powerful.
There that Maureen has really been an instrumental partner for me in bringing this to life. The the thing that is so powerful to me is not, I mean, I feel very lucky. I want to be very careful. I did not create this pattern. I discovered the pattern. The pattern is always there. The pattern has been there throughout time. You find it in myths, you find it in stories. It's just I had the great good fortune to discover it and to put it on the page. And so what I hope happens is that as women, as business women, as business leaders, as storytellers, as screenwriters, as directors, as therapists, we find new models for narratives and how we think about ourselves, how we think about our community, how we think about where we came from in terms of, I don't mean like historically, I mean us as people, right? Like, or us as a family. What is the story? If we lay this other framework on top of your story, how does it change? Do you understand yourself better? Do you understand your mother better? Do you understand your children better? Do you understand your colleagues better? Because that's the transformation I think that Maureen has helped me get to, right? Like we can get it shows me that we can get there together, even across continents, we are getting there together. And that's why there's nothing better. There's nothing better than that.
What a mission. What a mission. Well, I cannot wait for the weekend. We've got a wee code as well, don't we? Is it Queen's 15?
yes.
Queen's 15.
Okay.
So please join us, ladies, because this is going to be such a impactful weekend. And I think that everybody is going to leave with a bit of transformation themselves. Like, I think it's going to be, yeah, it's so needed. I'm so excited about it. And I think that this is an incredible book. And if you cannot make the event, I really do urge you to read this because yeah, it's one of probably the most recent book that I've read that I've been like, wow, how have I never read anything that's incorporating this before? So, but this is the time. This is the time for the Queen's Path. Love it.
Yeah, the
Love
time is now.
the time is now. Well, ladies, thank you so, so much for joining me. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the weekend. And thank you to everyone for watching as well. And if you're watching the replay, please pop it in the comments and ask any questions and I can pass them back to the ladies. But thanks again and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thank you.